Yeyanila Premadana Karuna Pracho Yeyanila Premadana Karuna Pracho Ena Prabhu Kota Gela Acharya Thakura Kahamara Swarup Rupa Kaha Sanatan Kahada Suragunata Patita Pavan Kahamara Bhatta Yuga Kaha Kaviraj Ekakale Kota Gela Goranata Raj Pashaneko Tiva Mata Anale Pashiba Goranga Gunera Nidhi Kota Gele Pablo Se Sabasangira Sanghe Ye Koilo Vilas Se Sangha Napaya Kande Naratama Das Yanila Premadana Karuna Pracho Ena Prabhu Kota Gela Acharya Thakura Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara Shatashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara Shatashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakura Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. New Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Okay, so we'll read the translation to this song. Saparshada Bhagavad Viraha Janiti Vilapa. Lamentation due to separation from the Lord and his associates from Prarthana, and this is by Srila Narottam Das Thakur. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Srinivas Acharya gone? Where are my Srup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta, and where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against a rock and enter into fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga accompanied by all of these devotees, in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. Okay. So yes, it is the disappearance of Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur. So we'll read a little short description or biography of him. In her childhood, Narayani Devi, niece of Srivas Pandit, became mad with love of God upon receiving the mercy of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Later she gave birth to Vrindavana Das, who was the last disciple of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. On his guru's order he wrote Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. So yeah, there's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, in recording Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, there are different, you could say, authoritative biographies of him. So we have Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is translated by Srila Prabhupada, and then we have Vrindavana Das Thakur's Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. We have a very nice translation and commentary by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And then there's the Sri Chaitanya Mangal by Lochan Das Thakur. And what are some other ones? Chaitanya Mangala. Yes. So Vrindavana Das Thakur, he's the author of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, a wonderful, most wonderful book describing Lord Chaitanya's pastimes and Lord Nityananda's pastimes. So it is practically a law among Vaishnav writers like Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Sanatana Goswami, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and Vrindavana Das Thakur to always keep themselves in the background. They never mention anything about their family lineage or personal history. The authors of the best written and the most relishable verses collected in Srila Rupa Goswami's Padyavali remain unknown. During the 16th century, entire books of exceptional transcendental prose and poetry were penned by prideless Vaishnavas preferring to remain anonymous. Feeling utmost humility, such Vaishnav writers express themselves only in relation to their preceptors. Krishnadas Kaviraj glorifies his gurus at the end of each chapter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Shri Rupa Raghunatha Pade Yara Asha Chaitanya Charitamrita Kaha Krishnadas. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami shows his supreme homage and gratitude by honoring Vrindavana Das Thakur with the affiliation Vyas in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya Leela, chapter 20, text 82. Which Srila Krishnadas, this is what he says here, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, about Vrindavana Das Thakur. Vrindavana Das Thakur is Lord Nityananda's favorite devotee. And therefore he is the original Vyasadeva in describing the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As Srila Vyasadeva told Sri Krishna's pastimes in Bhagavatam and other Puranas, Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur described Chaitanya Leela in Chaitanya Bhagavat. The humble heart of Krishnadas Kaviraj pours out more praises of Vrindavana Das Thakur. So here's another praise of him. Hearing Chaitanya Bhagavat destroys all misfortune. By reading Chaitanya Bhagavat, one will understand the glories of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, and he will attain the highest perfection of knowledge, pure love of Krishna. Since such a wonderful book could not be written by a human being, it seems that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself has spoken it through the mouth of Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur. I offer millions of respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of Vrindavana Das Thakur. By compiling such a valuable book, he has delivered everyone from the cycle of birth and death. This is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, chapter 8, text 33 through 42. At Mamagadchi in Modruma Dweep, Navadweep, Vrindavana Das Thakur established deities of Nitai Gauranga and Sri Jagannath Dev. He lived there as a celibate and worshipped his beloved deities. Vrindavana Das Thakur had many disciples, including Gopinath Brahmachari, a descendant of Sri Keshava Bharati. In Krishna's pastimes, Vrindavana Das Thakur is Srila Vyasadeva. So we'll relate more of this Bhagavatam verse and purport to Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur as well. Okay, so we could read the Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, entitled Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 30, The Activities of the Prachetas. We're on text 28. So everybody could please repeat after me. Etavat Tvam Hi Vibhubir Bhavyam Dineshu Vatsalai Yad Anusmaryate Kale Swa Buddhyabhadra Randana Etavat Tvam Hi Vibhubir Bhavyam Dineshu Vatsalai Yad Anusmaryate Kale Sabudya Badra Randana Etavat Tvam Hi Vibhubir Bhavyam Dineshu Vatsalai Yad Anusmaryate Kale Sabudya Badra Randana Etavat Tvam Hi Vibhubir Bhavyam Dineshu Vatsalai Yad Anusmaryate Kale Sabudya Badra Randana. Okay, word by word. Etavat, thus, Tvam, your lordship, he, certainly, Vibhuhi, by expansions, Bhavyam, to be conceived, Dineshu, and to the humble devotees, Vatsalai, compassionate, yet which, Anusmaryate, is always remembered. Kale, in due course of time. Sabudya, by one's devotional service. Abhadrarandana, O killer of all inauspiciousness. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Dear Lord, you are the killer of all inauspicious things. You are compassionate upon your pure devotees through the expansion. Did I say pure? Oh. Alright, let's rewind. You are compassionate upon your poor devotees through the expansion of your Archa-Vigraha. You should certainly think of us as your eternal servants. Alex, do you think you could see if that door is closed, separating? Purport. The form of the Lord, known as Archa-Vigraha, is an expansion of his unlimited potencies. When the Lord is gradually satisfied with the service of a devotee, in due course of time, he accepts the devotee as one of his many unalloyed servants. By nature, the Lord is very compassionate. Therefore, the service of neophyte devotees is accepted by the Lord, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 26. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti paritam ashnami prayatatmanaha. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. If the devotee offers edibles in the form of vegetables, fruits, leaves, and water to the Archa-Vigraha, the Lord, being Bhaktavatsal, compassionate upon his devotees, accepts these offerings. Atheists may think that the devotees are engaged in idol worship, but the fact is different. Janardhan, the Supreme Lord, accepts bhava, the attitude of service. The neophyte devotee engaged in the worship of the Lord may not understand the value of such worship, But the Supreme Lord, being Bhaktivatsal, accepts his devotee, and in due course of time takes him home. In this connection, there is a story about a Brahmin who was offering sweet rice to the Lord within his mind. The Brahmin had no money, nor any means of worshipping the deity, but within his mind he arranged everything nicely. He had gold pots to bring water from the sacred rivers to wash the deity, and he offered the deity very sumptuous food, including sweet rice. Once, before he offered the sweet rice, he thought that it was too hot, and he thought, "Oh, let me test it. It is very hot." When he put his finger in the sweet rice to test it, his finger was burned, and his meditation broken. Although he was offering food to the Lord within his mind, the Lord accepted it nonetheless. Consequently, the Lord in Vaikuntha immediately sent a chariot to bring the Brahmin back home, back to Godhead. Thus, it is the duty of every sincere devotee to accept the Archa Vigraha at home or in the temple and worship the form of the Lord as advised in authorized scriptures and directed by the spiritual master. Om Ganatipidandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulan Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Kam Karivachalam Pangam Langai Tegirim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Diditaranam Vancha Kapadribishcha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, I read the translation again. Dear Lord, you are the killer of all inauspicious things. You are compassionate upon your poor devotees through the expansion of your Archa Vigraha. You should certainly think of us as your eternal servants. I'd like to read that quote that I sent you, Alex. You think you'd pass it, please? So out of the there's five most potent forms of devotional service stated by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Prabhupada summary study, The Nectar Devotion. And this is, he says that by even developing a slight attachment to these five different forms of devotional, most potent forms of devotional service, even a neophyte could experience the love of God, start to develop. So, and part of, one of the most potent forms is deity worship. The other one is chanting the holy name, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, residing in a holy place. What's the last one? Yeah, associating with devotees. So, as devotees have brought up many times, that Srila Prabhupada very expertly arranged the morning program to facilitate and to specifically be crafted in such a way where it includes these five most important forms of devotional service. And so we shouldn't think that, oh, when I become advanced, I'll graduate, and then I won't have to attend the morning program anymore. The morning program is for everyone when they first join and then as they continue. It's not that it becomes, is this the right word? Obsolete? What's the definition of obsolete? Huh? Finished. Yeah. So it's important. Why? Because the most important forms of devotional service are there in the morning program. And it's important if one wants to develop love of God. If one wants to develop love for Krishna, it's important. If one doesn't, then yeah. It's of course it's still important, but according to them it's not important. Being under illusion. And it's not that okay, the deity worship, it's not the process for this age, that's true. It's not the process for self-realization, for God realization. There's different processes, yuga dharmas, that are given for particular ages that living entities find themselves in. Kali Yuga and different ages. So we're in Kali Yuga, and as Srila Prabhupada was once asked one time in Mayapur, he was asked by a devotee about deity worship, the different details of deity worship, because you could really, so many details. So Prabhupada said to this devotee, keep it simple. He said the process for this age is Harinam, chanting the holy names. But simple doesn't mean doing it in a half-baked way or doing it sloppy, but simple means there's a lot of details that we could do that we may not do, keeping it simple. But Srila Prabhupada mainly focused or mainly emphasized cleanliness in deity worship and being on time. Those were the main things he emphasized. And so although it's not the process for this age, it's still within the category of the 5 most potent forms. So it's extremely important. And it's not that it's, just as the morning program is it's not like it's, designed and meant for neophytes or beginners. Similarly, deity worship, although in parts of the scripture it is mentioned that it is very helpful for neophytes, which is true. But it's not that when one becomes advanced, one gives up deity worship. Srila Prabhupada himself would travel around at one point in time with small Radha Krishna deities in India when he was traveling. And we are just reading just the biography of Vrindavana Das Thakura. Part of his glories of Vrindavana Das Thakura, he wrote the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. That's very important. But also part of his glories is that he established deities and he worshipped them throughout his life. He was very devoted to his deities. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda, it says Jagannath Dev. So he's very devoted, sold out to his deities, he was always busy in their service. So we see that advanced devotees, pure devotees, such as Vrindavana Das Thakur, the glories of Vrindavana Das Thakur are, says he's Lord Nityananda's favorite devotee. That's to have such a personality as such as Nityananda Prabhu, say this is my favorite devotee, that's inconceivable. And there's so many pure devotees such as Vrindavana Das Thakur and so many in our line who engaged in deity worship and were completely devoted to their deities. So we shouldn't think, oh well, it's kind of like deity worship's for the guys who kind of can't do anything else. They can't really deal with people properly. Means they can't preach. Can't really deal with the devotees properly. They can't be the Bhakti leader. They can't be the temple commander. They can't be the temple president. Why? Because they can't deal with people properly. They can't go out and preach because they'll give us a bad name. So, all right, let's just stick them on the altar to worship Krishna. We shouldn't think like that, but of course, it is said in Scripture that for a Kanishta Adhikari, they just see God in the deity, and they don't see God anywhere else. It means they don't know how to deal with others properly, and they don't see the need to preach, so that it is there. But on the other hand, we have such devotees as Vrindavana Das Thakur and many other devotees who know how to perfectly deal with devotees and people, and they understand the need to preach. So it goes both ways. And Srila Prabhupada, he was very pleased if somebody was able to dedicate themselves to the deities, Radha Krishna deities, Gaura deities to service. And we have an example here. This is a conversation between Tamal Krishna Goswami and Srila Prabhupada. It's a room conversation in Mayapur, February 16th, 1977. So I'll just read a short excerpt of the conversation. Tamal Krishna Goswami. These two pujaris, the two brothers, Pankajangari Prabhu and Jananivas Prabhu, then Prabhupada says, they're ideal. Tamal Krishna Goswami. They look like they're out of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. They appear as two persons right out of that book. So to appear as if you're outside, like you just came out of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I mean, like you're coming out of the pages of the Bhagavatam or Vrindavana Dasa Chaitanya Bhagavat, that's amazing. The conversation continues, so I don't know, maybe it will become more clear. Prabhupada, yes, very good boys. Tamal Krishna Goswami, Vaikuntha men. Srila Prabhupada, oh yes, they do not know except the deity, very good boys. Tamal Krishna Goswami, perfect team of brothers. Srila Prabhupada, oh yes, therefore Krishna has brought them here in Mayapur. Previously, they were advanced. All of you, you were simply born because the mission was to be started. That's the end of the conversation. So, or the excerpt of the conversation. So the level of devotion, the level of commitment, the level of surrender, the level of Krishna consciousness that Srila Prabhupada was seeing in these two devotees, Pankajangari Prabhu and Jananivas Prabhu, Prabhupada was glorifying them as they're ideal, they're dedicated, they're committed, they're devoted, they're Krishna conscious, and they don't know anything except the deity. So they're just completely sold out to the deity. Very good boys, Prabhupada says. And they continued for so many years. And they're continuing, Jananivas Prabhu, continuing for so many years. Pankajangari Prabhu, as all the devotees know, just left his body. But it's a great example for us because it's needed. I mean, needed for us, for our benefit, but also it's needed in the sense that the spiritual master establishes the deities, not that so they could be neglected, but so they could be worshipped, on and on and on. And not so they could be worshipped by people who don't care about the deities, but by devotees who care and who are they're Krishna conscious. They have to be Krishna conscious. So that's what the spiritual master wants. So when the spiritual master, when Srila Prabhupada or the spiritual master, when they see that disciples are doing that, then they become most pleased. So it's a great fortune or glory for the spiritual master to have such disciples, but also it's a great fortune for the individuals who get to engage in the deity worship, and it's a great example for others, not to be like hippies, or not to be like loafers, or not to be people who don't care. Materialistic, but it's a great example for them that these are the people I should follow. And we see that that's one of what they're glorified for. These two brothers, these two devotees, they're glorified for their dedication. And we see that So that steadiness is important. And without steadiness, everything goes to HELL. The temples will be closed down and they'll become brothels. Sorry, but means apartments and apartment complexes in Pacific Beach. Well, yeah, I was thinking brothels because once real estate guys are dying to buy this property. We get a letter every year in the mail. Hey, by the way, we could buy this from you. Just call us up. We'll give you cash. They're dying to buy this property. Why? Because it's a prime location right by the beach. Tear down the temple, build some apartments, and I say brothels because it's a place of illicit sex, intoxication, all that other stuff. And that happens all the time. Like churches, there's this church down here on Grand Avenue. They tore it down and they built apartment complexes. Sometimes really low-class people, they tear down a church and they make it into a club. Actually, they don't tear it down. They keep the building. They make it into a dance club. Full of all types of, right? We want to pass them the mic? Vijay Prabhu.
I think University of Washington, their church right on campus, and turned it into a basketball court.
Yeah, basketball court. So it's of course, to think of such things is painful. But I mean, churches do close, temples do close. I mean, it's not like it's not a reality. They do close. And then you could say, well, we won't let it go that far. But those of us who are here as part of the community and serving Radha Giridhari and trying to maintain standards and so on, trying to maintain Krishna consciousness, which is the most important element of deity worship in anything we're doing here. It's a great responsibility that we don't become materialistic, we don't let the standards drop, that we try to worship the deity very nicely, but also bring people to the deity. It's not just deity worship, then it stops. That's the difference between Hindu temples and ISKCON temples, is that we bring people so they could surrender to Krishna, who's here in the form of Radha Giridhari, Radha Krishna. So both have to go on, deity worship and bringing people to the temple. In this way, we know that things are alive. Once the deity worship becomes sloppy, half-baked, the devotees become materialistic, preaching isn't going as strong as it should be, then things are not looking good. So to keep that in mind is important. It's our responsibility. So lastly, we have this Chaitanya Bhagavat here by Vrindavana Das Thakur. And the other day, I read a telling verse, which I'll read again, which is chapter 5, text 40 of the Madhya Kanda, 140. So what to speak of being envious of the Vaishnavas? If one causes pain to ordinary living entities, he is considered a fallen low-class person. Even after worshipping Lord Vishnu, if a person gives trouble to other living entities, his worship becomes fruitless. Such a person suffers unlimited miseries. So here's the purport here. See, I'll read these next two verses actually. The worship of persons who do not know that Lord Vishnu is present within the heart of every living entity is certainly materialistic. So we have to worship Krishna, but we have to know he is in the hearts of other living entities as well. Right? The devotees and everyone. Every living entity. Then the next, their worship is like someone who washes the feet of a Brahmin with one hand and beats him on the head with his other hand. So washing the feet and then with the other hand beating him on the head. So this is what he's saying. Okay, worship Krishna, but don't see him in the living entities. And it's just like, oh, worship, wash the feet of a Brahmin, a very respectful, very good thing to do, right? Great thing to do. But then hit him on the head, the same with the other hand. So in other words, it's not a complete understanding, to say the least. So in this purport of 140, there's many things mentioned in the purport, but one of the things that stands out is that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakura says, for persons who have this mentality of not seeing Krishna and other living entities and not being merciful to jivas, it says, their worship of Vishnu becomes the source of misery. Whoa. Their worship of Vishnu becomes the source of misery. Vishnu, another name for Krishna. Those endowed with an absence of jiva doya or compassion for other living entities, and yet proudly consider themselves servants of the Lord Vishnu, achieve the threefold miseries, rather than the devotional service of the Lord. So without being merciful to the living entities, and they say, oh, I'm a devotee. Well, you just get threefold miseries. Which means practically that people, they're stuck in being a materialistic devotee, or they just give up Krishna consciousness. This is an interesting point, because sometimes we wonder, why do people give up Krishna consciousness? Well, this is one of the reasons, because they're not being merciful to other living entities, and therefore they're trying to practice Krishna consciousness, and therefore, as Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, they're getting the threefold miseries of material existence. In other words, they're not feeling the pangs of the material existence. So they say, oh, well, I'll just join the circus, I'll just join the PB circus. But one question that I had for the devotees here is that, maybe the younger devotees could go first, but one question I had was that, why is it that their worship becomes a source of misery, and why is it that or what could be some reasons that a person lacking compassion to other living entities just experiences the threefold miseries? Why is that? What do you think? Could you pass the microphone? I mean, there's different reasons we could think of, but... So in other words, okay, you're practicing Krishna consciousness, but you're not being merciful, and therefore you're suffering. But why is that? Why is it why is that as the result?
I have something, but it's not fleshed out.
Well,
really.
I think Ravi. Yeah.
I think one reason could be that Prabhu, that form of devotional service is superficial, right? Because seeing the Paramatma in others' heart is also an internal aspect of Krishna consciousness. So he's doing there externally, but he's not really involved in it. And I guess he's also is it an offense? I'm not sure.
Yeah, you have time, Tyler? So superficial. So they're engaged in Krishna consciousness, but it's not on a deep level, and therefore they're not able to. They're missing a very important aspect of not seeing Krishna everywhere, everyone's heart. Therefore, they're suffering. All right.
Just for clarification, are they talking about non-devotees? They were saying ordinary people, if we don't give that to, or just people in general?
People in general. Just if we're not merciful to people in general.
See, in the beginning, that's what I was trying to think is, okay, well, devotees are worthy of it, but maybe people who aren't devotional aren't. But if they're talking about all people, then I was thinking this. To get mercy, you have to give mercy.
Yes.
And so you have to develop that quality. And that's actually a good chance to be merciful to others, because then you kind of have that experience, and then you can receive that as someone who's familiar with it in whatever mercy you can offer.
Yeah. All right. Well, does anybody have any other ideas? Anybody? Younger, older, devotee? Nice point, because they're selfish, and selfishness is so it's suffering. They have to suffer. Yeah, it's a good point. All right, now Rajendranan Prabhu has some. Yeah, great points.
Wonderful Katha. I'm so glad you brought up that point again. The neophyte devotee's proud. That's why he doesn't appreciate the good qualities or the love that Krishna has for all other living entities. A little tip for the Bajaris. Super Soul, we don't, it's not that forearm form, etc. How attracted are we? But the Bajari and the devotees can see that the deities are in the heart of every living entity. That's one of the 5 ways in which the deities manifest themselves to devotees, is as a Super Soul. 4 other ways, but anyway, that comment is there. And the Kanishta Adhikari, the superficial devotee, he is expert at discouraging and offending other devotees because he thinks he's best. They're not important. I can neglect them. I can slight them. It's of no consequence. And so, of course, when you're personally discouraging others that are dear to the Lord, He loves them just as much as He loves us, then how can we get the pleasure of the Lord or the spiritual master, which is the secret to peacefulness and happiness, growth in Krishna consciousness? So what will you get? You're going to get the 3-fold miseries because you're not being protected by the divine shelter, the instructions and energy of the Lord. There was one other point, that it's not just the young devotees that fall victim to this, and it's not just when one is a neophyte devotee that then he falls away because life is hard.
Yeah.
The devotional service hard. You can have devotees practicing Krishna consciousness for decades, and they identify with whatever services they've taken on, whatever gender or ashram they find themselves in. And you can see that very often their lives are very challenging because they have a much bigger burden and headache and suffer more than other devotees do. Their mind is relentless, and the pride causes them to be kicked time and time again because Krishna wants us to give it up. He wants us to come to the point you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, great points. Yeah, done Kumar? Prabhu? Pass that hot potato.
Since we're churning, so I just thought to churn it some more. But it seems like there's multiple right answers. Seems like several devotees
Different angles.
Many good points from different angles, right? So I was just going to throw another one in there. But it seems as if just understanding the concept of ahimsa, if you're in a position to help somebody, and you don't, and that's a form of violence.
Yeah.
So the people in general are ignorant, but we have the antidote. Like if we're a doctor, and there's several wounded people around us, we have the ability to help. But if we don't, that's a form of violence. So I think that's applicable to this as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to bring that up too. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, Prabhupada says non-violence means to preach Krishna consciousness, so violence means not, like you said. So yeah, it's a good point. All right, Vijay, Prabhu. Getting a lot of...
Well, Krishna, he says in the Bhagavad Gita that there's no one more dear to me than that person who is preaching this message. So it's an activity that is extremely pleasing to Krishna. This is why he comes. One of the main reasons Lord Chaitanya comes. Krishna comes to help the conditioned soul. So if we become devotees, aspiring devotees, and we don't take on this mission of his purpose of coming, then we can be affected by that, by the modes of nature. So it's and the more we're involved in this activity of which is so pleasing to Krishna, the more we become free of these modes of nature.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, one Bhajanarayan Swami, he brought up the other day, because I read this other day as well. he mentioned to me after class, he said, yeah, if somebody is like, because there's like different visions, like if someone has a very broad vision, they see bigger picture and all that, or they're not so self-absorbed, means capital or lowercase self, like self-absorbed. If somebody is very self-absorbed, absorbed in themselves, or like you said, selfish, then it's all about them, and then it's like, well, my this, my that, or hey, what did you say to me, or hey, what did you not say to me, or he said, she said, or it's like very restricted. Instead of like thinking about all living entities, of course, very different. But anyways, instead of thinking broad terms, we kind of like shrink it down, and it just becomes like me and my problems and my little problems and my pride and hey, how you respect me, this and that, and it just all becomes very small, And therefore, because someone's thinking like that, then it's, I mean, there has to be suffering. But with preaching, it's like, hey, well, okay, I may have a little problem here, this, that, but hey, well, what about this person? What about that person? Hey, what about all those people in Pacific Beach? Hey, well, what about the devotees? And then start thinking about others, and then yeah, that's happiness, right? That's bliss. We're doing it in a Krishna conscious way, and that's like the highest devotees, like the gopis, right? They completely forgot about themselves. It's all about Krishna. So that's the ideal, right? So anyways, yeah, thank you very much for all of your contributions, and also Bhajanarayan Swami. I thought that was a good point he brought up. So, okay. All right. Srila Vrindavana Das Thakura ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.